Has planting a fall garden ever crossed your mind? Have you ever wondered what is planted in a fall garden? Or did you know that a fall garden could be your greatest tool when improving your garden soil health? You and I are going to tackle all of these questions and more. Let's get growing. Hello and welcome to the Pray Just Plant podcast, the show that talks about growing a garden, a homestead, a healthy family, and most importantly, growing closer to God. I'm your host, Crystal Media, owner of the Red Ridge Farm Homestead, where our mission is to help women of faith find the courage to grow healthy food for their family while building a closer relationship with our Lord and Savior. That's you. Don't let the world hold you back. Pray, just plant. Hello, and welcome to the Pray Just Plant podcast. I'm your host, Crystal Media, and today, Season 2, Episode 10, we're going to talk about a fall garden. Yes, it's June. Yes, we're talking about fall. We're talking about a fall garden, and I'm going to get into why I'm talking about a fall garden in just a moment. But first, I want to ask you, do you have a plan in your garden for a fall garden? Have you even thought about adding this new venture to gardening? For me, I've always thought that, the summer was full of hard work. Why would I want to extend it any further? Fall to me is harvest time. Fall to me is when the canning needs to get done. When school starts, we homeschool, and when I'm preparing the homestead for winter, that means we're getting the barns ready, cleaned out, we're getting everything ready, we're getting all of the last minute projects done, trying to get everything wrapped up for when winter hits. That's what my fall is usually about. But it has really come to my attention that I am probably wasting a little bit of my fall of still bringing in just a little bit extra harvest. And also maybe spending a little extra time on improving my garden soil. I know we've been talking for the past pretty much this whole season about improving our garden soil. And the fall garden can be one of those things that we can do to improve our garden soil. I'm going to admit right now that I struggle. I have struggled with doing a fall garden. I don't know if it's because I live in zone 4. I don't know if it's just because it's different. It is just so different. So what is a fall garden? So a fall garden is going to be a garden that you not necessarily plant in the fall, but is a garden that will extend into the fall and grow a little bit longer. Are tomatoes on that list? Probably not. Beets? Yeah, so maybe. But a fall garden is where you can really extend your harvest and maybe make up for things that didn't happen or things that did happen in the spring. So maybe you had a really cold spring like myself and you didn't get your peas in on time, or you didn't get all those cooler season crops in when they needed to be in. And so a fall garden is going to help you still get some of those cool season crops in and still grow really well for you. So when we come down to the thought of planning a fall garden, so I told you I would talk about this in a minute. So this is why we're talking about a fall garden in June. Because when we go to plant a fall garden, it's not planted in the fall. It is planted in July. It is planted in August. So we're talking about a fall garden right now so that you have plenty of time to get your ducks in a row and get everything organized. The reason a fall garden is planted in the summer is because we're wanting to harvest and we're wanting to make sure that these plants that we're planting are maturing when the season is cool. So a lot of these things are going to be started indoors in the middle of the summer instead of started outdoors in the spring. They're going to be started indoors in the summer so that it is nice and cool for them. You're enjoying the air conditioning, so why don't you let them enjoy them too? And then they're going to be planted outside when the temperatures are going to start cooling off at night again. And then they're going to go in mature in still those cool temperatures. So that is really the beast of a fall garden. It's just something different. And it is planned for differently. Right now is when you need to be planning your fall garden, because you're going to be needing to plant it next month in July and probably early August. We're going to jump into the tips and tricks segment of this episode, where I share with you a few bonus tips and tricks I use here at Red Ridge Farm. So this week's tip is brought to you by the Soil Health Guide. This guide empowers gardeners to improve their garden soil health by unlocking 5 secrets that your soil wished you knew. Now, if you want to get a copy of this guide, you can quickly jump over to www.redridgefarm.org/resources. That is www.redridgefarm.org/resources, or you can go to the show notes of this episode. I'll include both links in the description below. So the tip for this week is mulch in the garden. We're going to be talking about weeds. Spring garden is you're getting everything planted, you're getting everything growing, and everything is doing its thing. But when that first warmth of the summer hits, that's when those weeds get their stride. That's when those weeds get ahead of you. In the garden, per se, the vegetable garden, the easiest way to control those weeds is just to stay on top of them, to really be vigilant, make a schedule, something that you can do in the garden, in your garden plan. But where I really struggle with weeds, and this is where my tip is going to come in, is in my flower gardens. I can't do things like solarization, and I can't really do much hoeing or other tips and tricks that I have in a podcast episode that we shared a couple weeks ago. I can't use many of those 12 organic methods because I have so many flowers growing there. So one of the biggest things that I use in my flower garden is mulch. Mulch can be your friend. And the reason it can be is because a lot of my flowers, some of them are bulbs. I grow a lot of irises. They are going to spread by their bulbs, so they need room to spread and then come up in different spots. So plastic mulch isn't what I'm talking about here. What I'm talking about here is your good old organic shavings, your bark mulch, that kind of mulch. So it's going to still let plants do their thing. It's still going to let plants spread and do their thing in your flower gardens. I specifically plant plants that spread by root and some that spread by seed. And so me going in there with a hoe or using solarization or some methods that I would use in my vegetable garden, they're just not going to work. But mulch is going to help you in so many different ways. So that's the tip for this week, is to include mulch as in that good organic, either wood shavings, bark, to really help suppress weeds in this big boost of weed time, but to not suppress your flowers in a way. So let's get back to talking about our fall garden. So what grows in a fall garden? If you're wanting to plan a fall garden right now, what are some things you can put in there? Well, I'm going to talk about a long list of about 20 different things that you can put in a fall garden. But I want you to think about this one commonality that all of these things are going to have. They're going to have that they are cool season crops. Like I said, you're not going to be able to do tomatoes. You probably won't be able to do peppers. And you're also going to think fast growing. There's going to be some things like you can do broccoli, Brussels sprouts. We're going to get into that in a moment. But most of them are going to be within 50 to 60 days. Some are going to be a little bit longer than that, but you're going to have to plan for those because you're going to need to think of keeping them in a cool area. So you may have to germinate them in your home like we talked about before, and to get the benefits of those longer season crops. But it can also be, you maybe even be able to plant them in your garden under shade cloth or something like that, just to give them a little bit of a cooler start before fall really starts going. So I've got these in alphabetical order, but you can plant them in any order you want. And don't forget, there's flowers too. I did a long blog post about different cut flowers that you can add in June, in July, in August that can be cut in fall for a beautiful fall cut. Flowers in your home for Thanksgiving and all of that fun stuff. So if you want to go to learn about more about the flowers, you can go to a blog post that I wrote. I will put the link in the show notes and in the description of this episode. So let's start with A. The first thing that you could probably put in a fall garden is going to be arugula. Arugula is a very edible Mediterranean plant of cabbage, it's from the cabbage family, that is known as rocket, could be another name for it. This brassica will bolt in the heat of the summer, but most of the cool temps of fall are perfect. And also arugula has a kind of a peppery taste, so it is great to be adding to your lettuces and salads in the fall. Now the next one, remember we're going alphabetical order. Let's go to B. Let's start with beets. Beets are a great addition to the fall garden. One, because they are going to tolerate the cooler temperatures a little bit more, but those cooler temperatures are going to make them more sweet. There's red varieties, golden varieties, and they are grown for their roots and the leaves, and they're also a very short growing season. They only take 50 to 60 days. And they don't mind the heat. The reason they work so well for fall is because they don't mind the heat when they're germinating. They actually love the heat when they're germinating. It's after they've germinated and begin to come up that they would really prefer cooler temperatures. So they are perfect for the fall. Next is bok choy. Bok choy is perfect for the fall because it will mature in 30 to 40 days, and it also loves those cooler temperatures. And then broccoli, of course, and Brussels sprouts. They're both part of the brassica family so they're going to love the cool temperatures as well. When you compare broccoli to broccoli that you have started in the spring and usually mature in early summer, so in the warmth, they're going to be a little bit more starchy. They're still going to be really good, but a fall broccoli that germinates in the heat, grows a little bit in the heat, but flowers in the cooler temperatures instead of the summer are going to taste so much better. They're just going to have a sweeter taste just because that's just the way the broccoli really prefers to grow. And same with Brussels sprouts. In fact, Brussels sprouts can handle to be grown in the winter. They can even have a few snowstorms on them. So they are a great addition to the fall. So let's get into C. So carrots. They will love the cool temperatures as well. The only problem you may have is going to be with germination because remember, carrot seeds need to stay very moist so that they can germinate. And you're going to have trouble with the heat of the summer to get those to germinate. And so one trick that I like to use is called the trenching system. This is going to help you really get over that hurdle. Even though fall carrots are going to be a struggle, they are going to taste so much sweeter when they get a few cold temperature nights. So what is the trenching system? The trenching system is where usually carrots are set at, I think, 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch deep. They're very shallow, and that's why they dry out so easily. So the trenching system is where you actually dig a trench of maybe 2 inches deep, and then you put the seeds at the bottom of this trench. What this is going to do is it's going to, when you do water them, water will pool down, not really pool, but it'll soak down into this trench and then stay moist a little bit longer. You can also take a further step and just put a light mulch of maybe hay or straw on top of this, not covering it completely like a mulch you want to get rid of weeds, but just something that'll block the sun a little bit from the trench until those seeds begin to germinate. Because remember, seeds do not need the light to germinate, but they do need moisture. Collards are another great addition to the fall garden if you are a fan of collard greens. Cabbages also, this is another brassica that can be grown even into the early winter. Then you have endive, or in the east. This plant is related to chicory and definitely needs the cooler fall temperatures to succeed. I would suggest transplanting this because remember it's going to need cooler temperatures through its whole life, so you can start it in your nice air conditioned home and then put it out in late summer, early fall, because it is a very short crop. It doesn't take many days to become to mature. It's a lettuce, it's a salad. So 30-40 days. Green beans are usually seen as a summer crop because they don't handle the frost. But if you plant them so that they bear fruit early and then you plan for a little season extension, green beans will grow great in the cooler fall temperatures. Mostly the reason of this is because many of the pests that bother the green beans during this time will be gone. And then there's green onions. Onions are already a cool season crop, and green onions will just grow more quickly so that you can harvest them before winter hits. Kale, yes, another cold season crop. Kale is something I grow all season, from spring through to the fall. What is nice about kale is that it doesn't need to be replanted. And here's how. I plant my kale every spring, and then about midsummer when it begins to suffer, I don't pull it. I just trim it back to just a few leaves per plant. The center will continue to grow, but slowly. And then when those cool temperatures return, it will explode a new growth and will give you a whole nother crop of kale. Because remember, kale can take a little bit of frost and even some snow. Kohlrabi. This is another brassica. There's a lot of brassicas in this list, isn't there? Because they are cold, hardy crops. But kohlrabi, unlike other plants of this, grows a large bulb at the center and can be eaten raw or cooked. It is mostly used in Asian cooking. Then you have lettuce, and then your peas, of course, peas and snow peas. Both of these love the cooler temperatures. That's what is so wrong with spring peas, is that if you don't get them in early enough, peas in general, even a little frost helps them grow more. I don't understand the psychology behind it, but peas love to be cool. And what happens is we plant them in the spring. They have a little bit of cool time, but then those summer temperatures hit when they start to mature. And then they, again, like the broccoli, begin to become more starchy because of the hotter temperatures. But if you germinate them in a cool place inside and then mulch them when you put them out, meaning you cover the soil to keep it cool, they will do great in a fall garden. Parsnips are also great. They are like a spicy carrot and can be mulched, just like I said before, to help with germination. But parsnips can actually do well into the winter. Same with carrots. I don't know why I didn't mention this before, but if you can mulch in your carrots really well, you can go out mid-December, mid-January, as long as the ground hasn't frozen, and that's why you mulch them very well, or put some kind of season extension over them. And as long as the soil doesn't freeze, you can still harvest those long into the winter. Radishes, of course, are great. They're going to be great to interplant with both your carrots and broccoli, just so you can kind of make sure where you planted them. I use them as a kind of a row marker. And then there's spinach, of course. And in fact, spinach, if you look at your long list of spinaches in your seed catalogs or online, there's some that say they prefer to germinate in the warm and mature in the cool. And then there's also some that like to germinate in the cold and grow in the warm. So you can find perfect varieties of spinach that can grow in both spring and summer and fall. So there's several different varieties that you can choose. Oh, and there's Swiss chard. Now, Swiss chard is usually more of a summer plant, but it can tolerate some frost as long as you cover them with maybe a box or something just on the nights that you think it's going to get too cold. Or you can even harvest it early for baby chard. Baby chard in my salads is so good. But don't forget those flowers. So I will definitely put that blog post in the show notes for you so you can look into what those flowers are that you can add to your fall garden. It is time for the Growing with God segment of this episode, where we talk about building that relationship. So the verse for this week is Isaiah 41:10. So do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. This verse really hit home for me when I was struggling with the world, when I was struggling with people saying things like, why do you want to do all that work to grow your own food? Why would you want to plant a garden? Why would you want to butcher your own chickens? Why would you want to even do that step when the grocery store is right there? Or when people say, well, why do you want a relationship with God? He's not around. I don't see him. He didn't help me. Or, God doesn't exist. He's not part of this society. We should take God out of our government. God should be not part of our lives. When I hear all of those different things from other people, this is when this verse really sticks with me. This is when this verse really helps me get through those hard times, because you feel fear. Sometimes you feel threatened by these people, by people that just don't understand what you're doing. Sometimes you feel threatened by people that just don't understand God, and you wish you could explain things to them. You wish you could explain why you choose to grow your own food. But then you also remember that a horse can't be taken to water, and you can't force them to drink. The Lord tells us not to argue with them. He does not want us to be confrontational. But it still hurts. You still feel inside, you can still feel fear, and you can feel dismayed, especially when the person that may be saying this, thankfully my family has always been a big supporter for me, but I have definitely heard from other homesteaders and other growers and other people that really want to draw closer to God that their family just doesn't connect. They don't see why you want this relationship and you want to grow your own food. And so this verse really helped me kind of share with them and also with myself, because I don't get it too much with my family, but I have gotten it from my friends and other people that they just don't understand why our family chooses to do what we do. They don't understand why we choose to be different from the world. And you can feel fear, and you can feel dismayed, and you can feel weak, and you can feel that like you need help. And that's where this verse really comes in. God is asking us to not be fearful, right? He says, so do not fear, for I am with you. Through all those times that you want to say something to others and say, this is why we do this, or you feel that threatened, you know that he is standing right there with you. He is with you. And then he says, do not be dismayed. Do not worry. Do not be discouraged, for I am your God. I will strengthen you, and I will help you. I will hold you up with my righteous right hand. So just remember this week that God is on your side in what you are trying to do for your family, in how you are trying to grow that healthy food for your family, and how you are trying to be different, how you are trying to break away from the norm. That's what God asks us to do. He says, do not be part of this world, for I'm going to be taking you from this world to be part of mine. This world is only a temporary place for us. So do not fear, for I, your God, am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you, and I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. Isaiah 41:10. So let's get back to our fall garden. So what are some ideas? So I mentioned fall gardens can also be part of our soil improvement plan. Fall gardens can have something that I just love to grow in my fall garden. And I think any garden, even if you're not wanting to plant vegetables, even if you're not wanting to jump on the full fall garden wagon, the most important thing we can do as gardeners, and the most important thing we can do for our soil, is to cover it. We don't want to leave debris in the garden because that can hold pests. We want to clean things up, but then we also want to make sure that we are covering our soil. So I think the most important crop before you even think of really doing all the other 20 is to plant cover crops. I have always been a person who really didn't want to plant a fall garden. And sometimes I don't plant one every year. Sometimes I have the energy to, and sometimes I don't. But one thing I do, even you may think that the garden is done when you are done harvesting. But if you want to build soil structure, if you want to take your soil into next season, you need to cover it. The fastest way to ruin all that soil structure that you've worked all growing season to develop is to leave it uncovered in the fall. Remember, God said that He would cover the earth with vegetation, and He meant it. When we leave our garden beds bare, or even with summer plants dying in them, we leave them to let God cover them, which will mean what? Weeds. And lots of them. We can only win our battle with weeds with constant vigilance. So cover crops are going to help you build your soil, and cover crops are also going to help you combat those fall weeds that you may not have all those different weeds to combat with in the spring. So the best and easy way is to prevent weed growth in the fall. And the best way to cover our soil and protect it and also improve it as well is with cover crops. There are two types of cover crops. So the way I'm going to explain this is there's two types, but each cover crop has its own benefits, which can also be broken up into different segments. But first of all, the two types that I'm going to be talking about are winter kill and non-winter kill. Those are the best two categories to begin with. And what this is going to do for you is if you choose to do a non-winter kill, that means that you're going to be needing to, maybe it's going to be in a bed that you don't plan to plant in the spring. So growing a cover crop that comes back in the spring to be put into your compost pile or eventually turned into your soil, that's going to be a great option if the next thing you plant in that bed is going to be tomatoes, because they don't need to be put in till May, and then that bed is still going to be weed free because the cover crop is still there. Now, a winter kill cover crop is going to help you when you want to say the next crop you want to plant in that garden bed is going to be peas. Well, they're the first thing you want to plant. So having that cover crop already gone and dead during the winter is going to leave a ready bed ready for you to go in the spring. So that kind of sounds like you should have your garden plan for next year already all planned out. But really, if you get into crop rotation, you're going to have a simple idea of where things are going. Because if you had tomatoes there this summer, you're not going to have tomatoes there next summer, or potatoes or eggplant or anything of the nightshade variety. You're going to have something different there. So you're going to have a little bit of an idea. You may not know the exact variety. You may not know the exact date you're going to plant them, but you do with crop rotation are going to know that you're not going to be planting tomatoes there. And if you had a crop of peas there this spring and then you planted it in with brassicas, you know that you're going to need to probably have something there that's going to last a little longer into the spring so that you can really rejuvenate that crop. That is also going to go into that next idea, the next thing of where things can be broken into. But first, before I get into that, all cover crops are not all winter kill, and all cover crops can be non-winter kill. What is going to determine winter kill is going to be the zone that you grow in. I currently grow in zone 4, so something that winter kills for me may not winter kill for someone who grows in zone 6. So do you see? It's kind of like it's kind of the difference between tomatoes will winter kill. That's just what they are. They're an annual. They like hot weather. They're not going to tolerate any cool weather at all. Broccoli or kale can be grown into the winter, at least here for me. So And probably down south in zone 5 and 7, kale can be grown all year round. So that's the idea behind this winter kill or non-winter kill. It's all dependent on what plant you choose and if that plant will survive through your winter. So now let's talk about the benefits of cover crops. Some cover crops can be green manures, especially if they winter kill and then you put all that stuff in a compost pile, or it can be they'll slowly decompose over the winter and go right into your soil. Winter killed vegetables or cover crops can add organic matter directly to your soil as biomass. And remember too that you can plant more than one cover crop at a time to a bed. You can do a mix. It does not all need to be the same. You do want to think that they are all going to be like each other, as in maybe if you need them to all be winter kill, you need to maybe pick cover crops for different benefits, but make sure they're all winter kill if that's what you are choosing for that bed. If you're wanting to plant that in the spring, because I will tell you, a few years ago planted wheatgrass, winter wheat through my whole garden. And when it came to because winter wheat does not kill over the winter. When it came to trying to plant my early spring crops, there is nothing like pulling weeds in mud. It sucks. So just be thinking ahead to those kind of things. So I'm going to tell you about a few of the most common cover crops with a little bit of their benefits and also when it's best to plant them. And I'm going to give you a zone. And what that means is that they are going to be hardy in that zone. So if they grow in a zone 4, that means if they're hardy in a zone 4, for me, that means they're not going to winter kill. If they are hardy for a zone 6, then they will definitely winter kill for me because that means they don't like colder temperatures. That means in a zone 6, they'll grow really well all year long, but in a zone 4, I probably get too cold. Okay, I hope that is as clear as mud. And I promise you that if any of this is really confusing, I have show notes. So you can go back to the show notes and really dive in a little bit deeper and understand this winter kill and non-winter kill, zone 4, zone 5, all of that fun. So annual ryegrass is hardy to zone 6. It is best established in July, August, and September. So the benefits of annual ryegrass is that it can be a legume protector. So you know how I said that you could plant several things together, right? Well, mini legumes like peas, alfalfa, they don't like to germinate in the heat. So planting a ryegrass in July, August, September, they're going to germinate quicker and then they're going to grow quicker and then they're going to shadow out the soil and make it a little bit cooler for your legumes to actually germinate and grow and be shaded a little bit so they're growing in a little bit of cooler environment. So they can protect things like field peas. Annual ryegrass will also suppress weeds and it can add a lot of organic matter when mowed. As a winter kill, the roots will also add lots of biomass and organic matter, especially if you're in a no-till garden. Having those roots just die off and everything die off over top of them, those roots will still stay there and they will feed the worms through the winter. The next one is oats. They are hardy to zone 8. They best established in July and August. Oats can be used as a weed suppressant and to protect peas and clover like ryegrass, a legume protector. They will also winter kill and add both biomass and organic matter. Then there's winter ryegrass, whichever. They are hardy to zone 4. So to me, in zone 4, this would be a non-winter kill, where annual ryegrass would be a winter kill because it's hardy to zone 6. Winter ryegrass, green manures benefits are organic matter when mowed, weed suppressing, and early weed suppressment in the spring if it is not winter killed in your zone. It is very important that if any cover crop survive the winter, it should be mowed or tilled in before it goes to seed. Seeds, remember, make more weeds. For winter benefits, it will create organic matter and be a great cover crop for covering and protecting the ground from winter erosion. The next one is field peas, and they're hardy to zone 8, best established August to September. Because these are peas, they of course are a nitrogen fixer. This means that they actually pull nitrogen out of the air and fix it in your soil in little nodules that deform on their roots. And they will also be edible. So it would be a great thing for animal fodder or to be eaten by you. They will also suppress weeds, and their winter kill benefits will create biomass and organic matter. The next is white clover. White clover is hardiness to zone 4. It's best established in August and September. White clover is a cover crop that is great for undersowing. So, for example, broccoli is planted for my growing situation. I plant 1 row broccoli per 30-inch bed down the center. That leaves lots of extra room around it. And what's going to grow there? I can either choose to grow something there, like white clover, or I can just let the weeds come up. So I choose to plant white clover there, especially in my fall garden and even in the summer, unless I want to plant something else. I do like to plant lettuces underneath my broccoli, especially with like my tomatoes. I love to put in marigolds and basil. So that's what undercropping or undersowing is. So in a fall garden though, it's great to undersow with a cover crop. It's going to help fix nitrogen because white clover is also a legume, and it will suppress weeds. White clover is also a great forage for animals like chickens. My chickens love it. And winter kill benefits are organic matter and biomass and spring ground cover. For me in zone 4, this does not winter kill. So it's going to actually come up in the spring, and it can be a ground cover that I can easily plant even tomatoes in. I could just only till up where I want to put the tomato, and I could still have the cover crop in place. Now, this is another clover, but it's called yellow sweet clover, and it has a hardiness of zone 6. So there's also another clover here. So as you can see, even though they're the same plant, there's some varieties that can survive in zone 4, and then there's some varieties that can't. So hardiness, yellow sweet clover is hardiness zone 6. It's best established in July and August. And this variety of clover is also a nitrogen fixer, but it's also a nutrient miner. And I mean miner like mining in the ground, like a coal miner or a diamond miner. That's what I mean by miner. So what this does, it usually has, this variety does the nodules, has the fibrous roots, but it also has a taproot that will, or not necessarily a single taproot, but the roots go a little bit deeper. And what that does is it's going to go a little more deeper than most of your normal vegetables or any other cover crops, and it's going to bring nutrients from down deep up into the growing area and into that plant. So when that plant is harvested to, say, put in your cover crop, or it's harvested and put into the soil, all of those nutrients would have come up with it, and now it's going to be at the surface. So you're bringing it up, some of those lower lying nutrients. It is also great for feeding pollinators. Then there's also crimson clover, hardiness zone 8, best established in July and August and September. This is another variety of clover that combines all of the other benefits of the top 2. Then we have hairy vetch, and it's hardiness zone 4, and it's best established in August, September, and October. Hairy vetch will give your garden much needed organic matter as it grows very quickly. It also is a nitrogen fixer and a spring cover crop. There's also medium red clover. So I kind of skipped over, but there's also another clover. There's 4 different clovers. and its hardiness is zone 4, and it's best established in August, September, and October. I kind of have this list in how early you can plant them. So the very first one can be established in July, where this last one is established later into the fall. So it's like the other white clovers. It just has a beautiful red flower, but it's one that can be established even in October. So let's recap. Fall is a great way to extend the harvest. Fall is a great way to maybe make up for spring mishaps. Fall is a great way to cover your soil. There are so many things that you can do. And the most important thing is you need to think of a fall garden kind of almost as its separate garden. You could also even think of it as a succession planting after what you've already planted. So if you have tomatoes planted in a bed and you are thinking that in that same bed you want to plant something for the fall, you can easily interplant that with your tomatoes so that it will grow and mature after your tomatoes have been harvested and pulled. So there's two ways that you can think of a fall garden. You can think of it as its own beast, its own thing, and plan accordingly. You can also think of it as a succession planting to the garden already growing in your garden. And you can also think of it as a way, even if you don't want to jump into the 20 lists of plants, maybe you don't want to harvest anything more, the most important thing you can do is to plant cover crops. Think of that fall garden as a way to even improve your soil even more, to protect it from winter erosion, and to just give your garden that loving care, even though you're not out working in it. Even though that garden is covered in snow, it's going to be protected. It's going to be taken care of. Because remember, our soil is the foundation of our garden. And we can't grow anything unless we have good soil. We need to take care of our soil. We may call ourselves gardeners, but what we truly are stewards of the soil. So I want to thank you for joining me today. And if this is the first time you have joined the Pray Just Plant podcast, I want to welcome you to the Red Ridge Farm community of fellow growers. And as always, don't let the world hold you back. Pray, just plant.